Why would a God who had just freed a people from slavery immediately introduce a system that required them to give away a portion of what little they had? Was tithing about money, or was it about something much deeper? To understand tithing, we must first understand who Israel was at the time it was introduced. Israel had just emerged from Egypt, not as landowners or merchants, but as former slaves. They had no national economy, no farmland yet, no inheritance, and no experience governing themselves. For generations, everything they produced belonged to Pharaoh. Freedom was new. Responsibility was new. Even trusting an invisible God instead of a visible master, was new. It is into this fragile, forming nation that God introduced tithing. What is tithing really? Tithing, in its simplest biblical form, means giving 1/10 of one's increase. But in Israel, it was never merely a financial transaction. It was a system, a structure designed to sustain worship, justice, and community life. Biblically, tithing was primarily agricultural, grain, livestock, oil, not coins. It supported the Levites, who owned no land and served at the tabernacle, the poor, including widows, orphans, and foreigners, the festivals, communal worship, and remembrance of God's deliverance. So the question commonly asked is, why did God want their money? But what we often forget to ask is, how do you build a nation that remembers who its provider is? Tithing appears even before the law of Moses. Abraham gave 1/10 to Melchizedek. Jacob bowed 1/10 to God, but it becomes institutionalized after the Exodus. In Numbers and Deuteronomy, God formalizes tithing as Israel prepares to enter the Promised Land. This timing matters. Israel was about to shift from wandering dependence, manna, to settled abundance, farms, vineyards, herds. Tithing was introduced before prosperity, not after. Why? Because abundance has a way of making people forget. One uncomfortable truth is this: tithing exposed the heart of the people. God did not need Israel's resources, but Israel needed to learn that their land, rain, harvest, and peace were not self-made. Tithing trained them to see prosperity as stewardship, not ownership. It also created accountability. The Levites depended entirely on the people's obedience. When Israel honored God, the Levites thrived. When Israel withheld, the Levites suffered. This is why God later says through the prophet Malachi, "Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me." The issue was never greed. It was broken covenant responsibility. Tithing forced Israel to ask a hard question. Do we trust God enough to let go? Even in ancient Israel, tithing was not always practiced faithfully. Prophets repeatedly confronted the people, not for giving too little money, but for giving while living unjustly. This tension continues today. Some argue tithing was only for Israel, tied to the temple and the Levites. Others insist it is a timeless command. Some churches weaponize it. Others avoid the topic entirely. So what's the truth? Biblically, tithing was part of a theocratic system, a nation governed by God, with no standing army paid by taxes, no welfare system, and no private priesthood income. It was not voluntary charity, it was national obedience. But the principle beneath it, honoring God first, sustaining spiritual leadership, and caring for the vulnerable, did not disappear. What did tithing mean for Israel? At its best, tithing created balance. Worship was maintained. The poor were remembered. Spiritual leadership remained accountable. Prosperity did not erase dependence on God. At its worst, when ignored, society fractured. Worship declined. Justice collapsed. Faith became hollow ritual. Tithing revealed Israel's spiritual health long before crises appeared. And what could this mean for Christians today? Here is the controversial question. If Christians are not under the Mosaic law, why does money still reveal faith so clearly? The New Testament does not command tithing in the same legal way, but it intensifies the principle, calling believers to generosity, responsibility, and integrity. Jesus speaks more about money than almost any other topic, not because God needs it, but because our hearts cling to it. Tithing, whether practiced as a tenth or not, forces the same ancient question upon modern believers. Who is your source? In the end, tithing was never about building God's wealth. It was about shaping a people who understood that freedom, provision, and purpose all come from Him, and that what we hold in our hands was never meant to stop with us.
Did you enjoy the story? Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This motivates us to create more Bible-inspired stories to share with you. God bless you.